Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we decode the secrets of the business world. And boy, do we have a doozy of a report for you today from VisionWave Holdings Incorporated. It is a 10Q, and let me tell you, it is packed with enough corporate maneuvering to make a spy novel jealous. Before we dive in, if uncovering the real story behind company filings is your jam, make sure you are subscribed, and hey, we've got a fantastic community over on our Discord server, linked in the description below, where we break down these documents and more real time. Alright, let S get to it. This is VisionWave Holdings Incorporated S quarterly report for the period ending the 31st of March 2025. Now, a crucial explanatory note right at the beginning tells us something really important. This report reflects the operations of Banix Acquisition Corp. Only. Why? Because the actual business combination where VisionWave Technologies Incorporated merged with Banix did happen until July 2025, well after this reporting period. So what we're seeing here is essentially the story of Banix before it officially became the VisionWave Holdings Incorporated we might know now. It's like looking at a birth certificate before a name change. Let's jump straight into the heart of it, the financial statements. Look at this balance sheet as of the 31st of March 2025, and even back on the 30th of September 2024, the company S total assets were showing a big fat zero. Yes, you heard that right, zero assets. And zero liabilities except for a small account payable and amounts due to related parties. This is Dacin's your typical company with factories and products. This is a company in its very early stages, focused entirely on a business combination. Scrolling a bit further, we see the stockholder S deficit. This is basically the opposite of equity. For the 31st of March 2025, the deficit was over $66,000, and for September 2024, it was around $3,000. This shows that the company hadn't generated any revenue and was primarily funded by borrowing or investments that haven't yet translated into positive equity. Now, the statement of operations which tells us about the company S profitability, or in this case, its lack thereof, for the 3 months ending the 31st of March 2025, the company reported a loss from operations of over $60,000, and for the 6 months ending the same date, that loss was just over $63,000. Remember, this is before the main business combination even happened. So these numbers really represent the operational costs of Banix Acquisition Corp. itself, primarily related to the activities needed to pursue a merger. The net loss here is also in the same ballpark, over $60,000 for the quarter and over $63,000 for the 6 months. It is crucial to remember these aren't profitability numbers in the traditional sense. They reflect the costs of being a SPAC or a similar entity preparing for a big event. The weighted average number of shares outstanding is just 1, which is typical for a shell company before a merger, and the loss per S-share is, well, a very large negative number, reflecting that minimal share count. This statement of changes in stockholder S deficit really highlights the shrinking equity. We start with a deficit of about $3,000 at the beginning of the period in September 2024. Then we see a net loss of about $3,000 for the next quarter, bringing the deficit to about $6,000 by December 2024. And then bam, a massive net loss of over $60,000 for the quarter ending the 31st of March 2025, ballooning the total deficit to a hefty $66,000. This clearly shows the company burning through its available funds just to keep the lights on and pursue its merger goals. Let's look at the cash flow for the 6 months ending the 31st of March 2025. The company used $44,500 in operating activities. This is primarily due to the net loss. But here is where it gets interesting. Cash provided by financing activities was $44,500, coming from related parties. This means the company was essentially being funded by individuals or entities closely connected to the company. This often happens with SPACs or early stage companies before they secure external investment or complete a merger. The net change in cash and cash at the beginning and end of the period are all zero, indicating that all cash was either spent or not held by the company at the end of this reporting period. Now, let us dive into the notes where the real story often unfolds. Note 1 explains the organization and business operations. VisionWave Holdings Inc. was incorporated very recently, on the 3rd of September 2024 as a wholly owned subsidiary of Banix Acquisition Corp. There are other subsidiaries mentioned too, like Benix Merger Sub Incorporated and Benix VW Merger Sub Incorporated, all set up to facilitate the upcoming business combination. The proposed business combination section is key here. On the 6th of September 2024, Banix entered into a merger agreement with VisionWave Technologies Incorporated. The target company, this combination was expected to close before the 30th of June 2025, subject to various conditions. This sets the stage for everything that follows. This liquidity, capital resources, and going concern section is super important for understanding the company, its immediate survival. It states that Banix, the parent company, was facing a potential liquidation deadline. However, they pushed that deadline and later closed the business combination on the 14th of July 2025, which, as the report notes, alleviating the mandatory liquidation requirement. The report then gets very candid. As of the 31st of March 2025, the company had no cash, a working capital deficit of over $66,000, and no funding sources other than from related parties. This is a classic going concern warning sign, meaning there is doubt about whether the company can continue operating for the next year. But here is the lifeline on the 8th of April 2025. Effective the 31st of March 2025, they secured a funding support agreement with Stanley Hills, said to be the principal shareholder of VisionWave Technologies. Stanley Hills committed to provide enough financial support for working capital needs for at least 12 months. This funding could come as direct payments, advances, or capital contributions. This agreement was crucial in addressing the going concern doubts. The report also highlights that the merger closing triggered access to financing from other investors, like Investor A with a $2 million draw and a $50 million equity line, Investor B offering $2 million, and Investor C with an $18 million LOC and a $5 million advance. These are significant commitments that paint a picture of future financial strength, albeit post the reporting period. Under Note 2, the significant accounting policies, we find a standard disclaimer that financial statements are prepared using US GAAP, and that management makes estimates and assumptions. They also mention that no prior year comparative amounts are available because the company was incorporated in September 2024. This is typical for very new entities. Note 3 details related party transactions. This confirms the funding agreement with Stanley Hills LLC, where they committed to fund the company as working capital. It also mentions that the sponsor of Banix, Instant Fame LLC, and Stanley Hills have paid expenses on behalf of the company and expect to continue doing so. The amounts owed to related parties as of the 31st of March 2025 were about $47,000, which is a small amount, but it shows the reliance on these parties. Note 4 reiterates the stockholder S deficit. The company is authorized to issue 1,000 shares of common stock, and as of the 31st of March 2025 and the 30th of September 2024, there was only one share issued and outstanding. This aligns with the SPAC structure, where initial shares are minimal until the merger. Commitments and contingencies in Note 5 mentions a lawsuit filed in September 2025 by a shareholder who wants a declaration that they are not an affiliate. The company is contesting this, but at this stage they can estimate the potential loss. This is a developing legal issue to keep an eye on. And then we get to subsequent events, which covers what happened after the 31st of March 2025, up to when the report was filed in October 2025. First, on the 9th of April 2025, they entered into an agreement with Maxim Group LLC to act as a placement agent for a potential private placement of up to $10 million. This indicates they were actively seeking more funding. Then, a significant leadership change. On the 9th of September 2025, 3 independent directors, Eric Schuss, Chuck Hansen, and Haggai Ravid, were approved. They are set to receive annual retainers, committee chair fees, importantly, annual equity grants valued at $60,000 each, and a one-time payment of $150,000 for Mr. Schuss for his past service. This signals a move towards establishing a more formal board structure. Here is another big one. On the 11th of September 2025, they entered into agreements with the Other Second Limited, an investor from the Cayman Islands. They advanced $2 million as a pre-paid advance, and agreed to fund another $2 million. These are for convertible promissory notes, meaning the investor can convert these loans into stock. One note has a 6% interest rate that jumps to 18% if there is a default, and an amortization event could trigger monthly payments of $750,000 plus a premium. The conversion price is tied to stock price with a floor. The second note has a higher interest rate of 12%, 18% on default, and requires monthly principal repayments of $200,000 plus a premium. These are complex financing arrangements, common in companies seeking significant capital. And get this, On the 26th of September 2025, they finalized a consulting agreement with Crypto Treasury Management Group Incorporated for advisory services to establish a digital asset treasury reserve. They were looking at a 2-year term, a $50,000 retainer, potentially 17 Bitcoin or its cash equivalent as a success fee, and 250,000 shares of common stock. This is a bold move into the crypto space, contemplating capital formation of up to $300 million for crypto assets like Bitcoin and Solana. This signals a significant shift in potential business strategy beyond just the initial merger. Moving to the management's discussion and analysis, or MD&A. This section reiterates that the company was formed to effectuate a business combination and hasn't generated operating revenue yet. It confirms a net loss for the quarter and 6 months, consisting of operating expenses. The going concern discussion here echoes what we saw in the notes, highlighting the critical funding support from Stanley Hills and other investors that secured their operations. Now, the material weakness section in item 4. This is a big red flag. They identify a material weakness in their internal control over financial reporting. This means there is a reasonable chance that a significant financial error could happen and go undetected. Specifically, they mention issues with accounting for complex financial instruments, fair value measurements, prepaid expenses, taxes, and legal fees. They also talk about reclassifying warrants from liabilities to equity, which is a common SPAC issue, and how they valued shares transferred to anchor investors. This indicates that despite their efforts, their financial reporting processes are not yet robust enough to be considered fully effective. Under risk factors, they directly address the material weakness, stating that if they can't fix it, it could hurt investor confidence, affect their business, and potentially lead to sanctions from regulators or stock exchanges. They also mention that these remediation efforts can be time-consuming and costly. Finally, the exhibits list gives us a roadmap of all the important documents. We see the merger agreement, bylaws, equity incentive plans, and various financing and employment agreements. It is a confirmation of all the major steps and agreements we've touched upon. So, what is the story here? VisionWave Holdings Incorporated, prior to its big merger, was essentially a shell company, Bannex Acquisition Corp., focused on surviving and completing its business combination. The financial statements reflect this, with 0 assets and significant deficits, financed by related parties and commitments for future funding. The going concern warnings were serious, but the subsequent events, especially the funding agreements with Stanley Hills and other investors, and the financing from Yavasukan Limited, appear to have secured the company's immediate future and provided capital for its aspirations. The bold move into digital assets via the consulting agreement with Crypto Treasury Management Group Incorporated shows a forward-thinking, albeit high-risk, strategy. However, the identified material weakness in their internal controls is a significant concern. It suggests that while they're securing funding and planning ambitious moves, their foundational financial reporting needs serious shoring up. This is something investors will want to watch closely. Is this a sign of growing pains in a complex, rapidly evolving company, or a deeper structural issue? What is your take on VisionWave's current situation and its dive into crypto? Let us know in the comments below if this deep dive was helpful. Hit that like button and subscribe for more corporate decoded analyses. And don't forget to join our Discord community found in the description for more discussions. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.